A big welcome to you all to our channel. We are Team Crushing the Meta, and today you are here with D-Boy. Okay, you see here the GB8 rising, and you see the playmats. So, what is this card doing in the GB8? In this video, I will explain lots of things, but mostly it will be the deck profile. After this, I will do the explanation video, combo video, and options video. So there will be at least two other videos. Alright, first of all, we are talking about premium spike brothers, the Turbo GB8, or as I like to call it, the Rush Turbo GB8. When it comes to this deck, the most important thing is to know what is something that could cancel the GB8, as in stop the combo, and what are the things that you could do about that. So the card that is played the most right now that could stop the GB8 or make the GB8 turn harder is of course Honey. So you have to know how to play around Honey. Second thing is, and one of the most important things, is of course the overtrigger. As in the overtrigger defensively could stop this deck and its drags, and then you have to wait another turn for a second GB8. What to do about both of those? We'll explain that in this video. Let's start with the first issue, which is Honey. To stop Honey, you need to play cards that could target it, negate its kill, so that they can't play it next turn as well. So this is your best option. And of course, you have other options that could retire it, get rid of it, like this one, or even more. There are even more options. But most important one, as I have tested, is this one, because they could not use it again. It stays on the field, but they cannot use it, which is good. They have to retire it and then call it back, and it will be a little bit difficult. All right, next thing is, of course, you don't want to play cards during your GB8 that cost you counterblast. So Spike Bouncer, as good as he is replaced by a new card, which is her. So she replaces, I call her the Demon Lady. She has replaced the Spike Bouncer, as in she makes an even stronger turn during the GB8, which I will show you in the second video, as in the combo video. I'll show you a glance of it in this video, but it will be in the second video. Next thing that is important is, of course, the overtrigger. To cancel the overtrigger, you do need to do your opponent damage. That's why it's called a Rush Turbo GB8. As long as the overtrigger is out there, you keep doing your opponent damage, so they could not take a lot of damage during the GB8 turn, which means it will be harder for them to get that overtrigger. Alright, so first let's start with a glance of the combo, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about the deck. So I'm thinking, or I'm assuming, that you guys know how to get to the GB8. If not, then I will explain it as well. Alright, so first things first. To get to the GB8, there are multiple things that you could do. First of all, you need to have the 3 heals or 2 heals on hand, depending if you go first or second. Let's go through that. Let's say you go first, right? So this is your starter. You ride into a great one. The starter comes out of your soul as it's a forerunner. It's your opponent's turn. Let's say you go first, right? So it's your opponent's turn. They attack you. They do you 1 damage. 1 rising gets into the damage zone, right? It's next turn. You ride into whatever grade 2 you have in your hand, and you could attack. You would rather undercut, or you could just hit them. It depends on what they have or what deck they play. But you could just attack into a Vanguard or a Vanguard or whatever. Next turn they will do you 1 more damage. And then if they play a deck that could retire your starter, you get rid of it. If not, you keep it on the field. Why? Because you have a bigger chance of drive checking a heal trigger. Next turn, if you already have the old rising in your hand, then this is the way you go. If not, you could have a card in this deck that is Acrobat Verde, which is the old Stride Folder. You could call it to the field, show a grade 3 to get the old rising to your hand. If you don't have this and you don't have this, then you would have to use your Mega Trainer to get him. You need to call him to the field to be able to get the Rising to your hand. So that's assuming that you already have the Rising in your hand because you're good. And so it's next turn, you ride into the old Rising, the new art or the old art, pretty much up to you. And you activate the skill of your stride, which is Bruce. Now you discard a grade 3, you could ride or stride into this, and then you create 2 markers, which in this case, they will be 2 force 1s, of course. Now you activate the skill of Mega Trainer by retiring him and counterblasting 1 to get the heal to your hand. And in this moment, I'm assuming you already have 1 heal at least in your hand, or 2. So he already flips a copy of himself, which is very important. So at the end of the turn, you will have GB2. All right, so now you could call stuff from your hand if you have any, and you could pressure your opponent a little bit, or you could keep them in your hand. But at least on this column, you want a little bit of pressure. Right, so this attacks. At the end of the battle, it goes to your soul. You draw a card, and then he attacks. You could activate the skill of Rising to counterblast 1, put a card from your hand into your soul, and then you could call right here, for an example, Ionel, chilling in the back row. He attacks, he hits or doesn't hit, his skill will go off, put a card from your hand into your soul, you have lots of draw triggers, and you could call a second Honey, for an example. So you could have a double Honey on the field. At the end of the battle, he goes to your G-Zone. And this is basically your field. And your G-Zone has already GB2, which means that with 3 heals, you are able to get into the GB8, right? So when they attack into you, you activate the first heal, or all 3 at the same time, pretty much up to you, to get whatever G-Guard you want. You could have this, 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 or this, or you could also, of course, play the Hecatongus, which is also a good option, but whatever, you could at least activate something that guards. So these are basically your options. If you want to activate the flipper right away, so him, Linus, then you could do that. Depend on how much they attack with. And then after that, you could also use the second heal and the third heal. So as long as you use the 3 heals, you're good to go. Most of the time on the first attack, I do use this to use the flipper. So I will have 1 heal in my drop zone already, and then I will put the G zone right here. So this, and you could flip something that you have in your G zone. Let's say you flip Desmule, if they cannot retire these, or you could also just guard with him, up to you. And then you use your second heal to go into the Queen. You remove 2 heals, bind them to counter charge, then use your skill to counterblast 3 cards from your drop zone back to your deck to draw if you have a grade 3. If you have your over trigger in your drop zone, you could put it back with Gus. There are lots of options that you could do. And then on the same attack or on the next attack, normally I would do it on the same attack, you activate another heal to go for another flip G-Guard. And his skill will flip something like a Reggaeton, for an example. And then you already have 2, 4, 6, 7, which will give you GB8 on the next turn. So that is basically what you do if you go first. If you go second, then you have the first stride. So after the first stride, you still need 3 heals because you have GB2 or GB1, and then after that you go into the GB8. So this is basically how you go to the GB8, right? When you are in the GB8, so let's say you have done all of that, and you're left with these right here. You have the 2 counterblast, or I mean the 2 damage, and then you get to the GB8. So next turn you want to ride, and now you had this as your Vanguard. Now you want to ride into the new Rising. When you ride into the new Rising, you create a Force 2 and a Force 1, which is pretty good because it would leave you with 3 Force 1s and 1 Force 2, which is perfect. Discard a grade 3 to ride into this, and normally they will do you a damage or 2. So let's say that you are on 4 damage, right? So you go into the GB8, and the 2 cards you need to have in your hand to make your turn strong is you breach and her. You need these two. If not, you could of course create them because you are playing the GB8. So let's say you have none of them, you move these up. If you have them in your hand, you call them. If not, then this is the way. So you call them to the front row and then you start to attack, right? So let's say you attack with this first because it's the weaker one. The skill of the GB8 will activate. It will give him the 10k and the skill of the GB8. If you play against a Kagero or Narukami, your field would look different. But if not, this is how your field would look like. You attack with this, and then at the end of the battle, the skill of the GB8 activate, which if you guys don't know, at the end of the battle, or at the start of the battle, that when something attacks, you could give the skill of the GB8 to one of your Vanguards or units. And that unit gets a Vanguard skill, which is whenever it attacks or boosts at the end of the battle, you put that card and a card from your hand into your soul to call something from your deck, which you will do. On the side that you don't have the markers, you want to have her. And on the side that you have the markers, so you activate the skill again, and then this goes into your soul with a card from your hand, and on this side you want him. This is the way you want to do it. So now you continue on attacking, right? So this attacks, his skill will activate. You put a Vanguard or a card, which is not a trigger, from your drop zone back to your deck, and he gained the skill at the end of the battle, goes to your soul and draw a card. The skill of the GB8 goes into him as well. Him going into the soul to draw is not a cost, it's a skill. The cost is putting a card from your drop zone back to the bottom of your deck. This is very, 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 very important. The cards you want to put back are the cards that you have in the early game, like this if you have it in the drop zone, like a tier, like a skydiver. Those are the cards that you want to put. And during your plays, you also soul blast with her, with a tier, with other cards, but mostly with her, the tier. So you put some cards, this goes to your soul with a card from your hand. Let's say for an example, you have another copy of her because you've drawn into her. She goes into your soul as well, and then you call something from your deck. You call this. Now it's important to know how much copies you have of her in your deck and how much copies you have of him in your deck or in your soul. So you have 1, 2, and 3. And you still have 1 copy of him elsewhere. So that is good. So with this, you still leave those in your soul and you could still attack with him one more time, right? Of course, at the end of the battle that he attacked, you still draw a card, but first you activate his skill. That's important. First his skill, then his skill. So let's do it one more time. So he attacks, you put a card from your drop zone to your deck, which let's say is a tier, and at the end of the battle, his skill goes on standby, his skill activates, put this and a card from your hand into the soul to call something from your deck. And now you actually would like to call the 3rd or the 4th copy of him that you have in your deck, which is, now we have it in the damage, which is important also to know, but you call it from your deck, right? Now you draw a card. So now you have 3 copies of him in your soul. Now she attacks. She attacks, activate her skill, soul blast 3, these 3, to draw a card. You could not draw into him because you don't have him anymore. As long as you don't draw into the skydiver, it's good. And otherwise you could put it into your soul. So you draw into whatever, and the skill of the GB8 go into her. Then she goes into your soul with a card that you drawn, and you call something from your deck, which most of the time is another copy of her. These you have in your drop zone. He attacks, you recycle 1, you put him in a card from your hand into your soul, and then this continue on until you have the last copy of him in the on your field, and all 3 in your soul. Then she attacks again, you soul blast them, and it continues. And you don't need lots of cards in your hand for this combo. You actually only need 1. You need a second one to reset Skydiver, because Skydiver returns 2. So he could return those 2, and then you could continue on. And that's basically the combo. So we will go into another video to explain it in depth, but this gives you a general idea why the deck is built this way. Alright, to not make the deck profile too long, or the first part of the video too long, I will give you a fast deck profile, and in the other video we will go in depth about the card and what you could put in and put out. So again, this will be a fast video that I show you pretty much everything, and then after that we'll go back and explain more. Alright, so let's jump into a fast deck profile, and after that come back and explain the deck a little bit in another video, because again, we don't want to make the video too long. So for the grade 3s, you play 4 copies of Rising Nova. 2 on 2. 2 of the new one, or at least, let's say the V1, and 2 of the G1. As I explained in the combo before, it's important to have the G1 if you go first to get the GB2, and to pressure your opponent a little bit, or to build up a defensive field. Up to you, you could go both. And the V Rising Nova is important to get the Force 2, which would make it harder for your opponent to guard, and they could take less attacks. That's why you play the Risings. Next, we play 3 copies of Juggernaut Maximum. Juggernaut Maximum is basically your go-to right target if you go second, because he builds you a defensive wall. Everything you guard with from your hand will get an extra 5k defense. Normally I play this card at 4 because it's very, very, very important. But now, because mostly you do ride into Rising first, you need less copies of him, which will open up a place for at least a copy of a Skydiver. Skydiver is the card that could remake the combo. So as I explained again in the short combo session in the video, that the Skydiver could actually put you cards from the drop zone that you lost. If you made a mistake with the breaches that you don't have any left in your deck, he could actually make you one. But not talking about misplays, talking about how to make the deck more optimal, he could put you a breach and a Demonic Lady into your deck, which means you could reset the combo again. And he gets power, which is good as well. And last but of course not least, you have the 4 copies of Jelly Beans. Is the card that lets you turbo, because with him you could search your heals, because your heals are Dudleys, and he can search your Dudleys, which are not grade 3s. Grade 2s. We have 4 copies of Breach. One of the most important cards in your deck, one of the cards that makes the combo possible. If you don't want to play the Spike Bouncer, then you have 2 options to play with Breach. You have the Demonic Lady and you have the Sisters. The Sisters are good as well, but now they are replaced because, again, she does basically everything that they do, but better. But the thing with these 2 is, of course, they do have the second ability, which is the Retire ability, which is good as well, but now because Honri could get removed from the game to have his skill, it doesn't matter anymore. So 4 breaches, very important. Next we have 3 Demonic Ladies. You can play 4. Again, it is pretty much up to you and the way you want to build the deck. It's never enough. You could play as much as you like, as long as you can keep the deck in balance. I like 3. 3 is good because, again, you do recycle her. If you get her 2 times off in your GB8, that's already 7 extra attacks, which is insane. So yeah, I mean, what do you want more? Next, we play 2 of the new promo for Spikes, which is Roberts. Thank you, Brum, for Roberts, so shout out to him. Of course, the card is insane. You get during your right phase, this card helps you to not G-assist, and this card's help you to get heals to your hand, because he could pretty much get you everything, which is not a grade 3. So searching your heals, searching the right grade ones, if you want them defensively, if you want the Honali in the early game, whatever you like, he could pretty much give it to you. But basically, your PGs, your heals, your stones, your Acrobat Verdes, he could make them if you don't want to use your starter. He acts as a kind of an extra Mega Trainer, which is pretty good. The other skill you don't really use that much for the Counterblast. If you really want to rush, you could basically use him with a Skydiver. It's good to get even more attacks during the rush turns. It's good, why not? Last but not least, we play one of the rain elements. You could play more if you have space. I find one good enough because you could recycle it, and as long as it doesn't go into the damage zone, it's good. But most of the time your opponent will activate the Honey to remove it anyway, so this will not be that effective, but sometimes it is, and it does what it needs to do. So yeah, very good card and a beautiful SP. So yeah, great ones. So we play the 4 copies of Ruluk, or Roluk, or whatever you like to call it. I just call it Steentje in Dutch. So this card is pretty good. It helps you to survive the early game. It helps you to survive their stride turn if they go first and you're still on grade 2. And it's a grade 1, which is a 7k. We don't play 8ks in this deck because we always want to undercut if we want to undercut. Because of course you have your starter, so you could still hit if you want to hit. 4 copies of him, really good. I play only 3 copies of Tier. Normally I play 4, especially now because you have Honey. But I felt like it was not that needed anymore. Even with them activating a Honey in that turn, you could still go through that and still do them lots of damage. But having the Tiers in your deck is still effective. They do help to Soul Blast the Breach, and they do help to get the counter charge during turns that you need them. If your opponent doesn't give you CB and you want to go into something like this, then he does help. So you could play 4 if you want to. I'm okay with 3 because I played an extra copy of Roberts and I felt like he was more effective in the deck. 2 Honeys, I didn't feel like I needed more. If you want to play more, again, pretty much up to you. You could take Reluk out or Ihoneri. 1 Acrobat Verdi, you don't need more than 1. Basically, only if you go first, only if you don't have a Rising. You could search him out your Mega Trainer, he make you a Old Rising or a G Rising and you're good to go. And for the orders, we play, of course, one of the order PG. Why? Because it's really good and premium. So you see that we play here 1, 2, 3, 4. So is this enough grade 1s? If you ask me, normally I would like to play 1 more because it's 6, 7, 8, 9. But again, because you play 2 copies of Robert still could make you the right grade 1s. And I haven't felt like more is needed. But if you feel like you're G-assisting too much, you don't get Robert, then it's the same because Robert is an extra copy of Tier normally. If you feel like you're using Robert and you're still not getting the right grade 1s, then you do need to take out the Robert or whatever to add in a Tier. Then you're good to go. Or something else if you don't want to play Tier. But Tier will be the better option. For the grade 0s, your starter, your Mega Trainer, very important to have him in your deck. He is the one that could make all the plays possible if you calculate it the right way. Getting a Lerouk, getting a PG, getting a heal, getting a Acrobat Verdi, getting a Honolly, even getting a Tier sometimes could be very effective. So think about what you want to get. PG is good. The only card that you could not search is of course this. If you ask me why, it's because this is not a Grey Elemental, which means it's not a Spike Brother. So he could not search it because it doesn't have a clan. And he specifically say you need a Spike Brother, which means that you could still search your Grey Elementals because Greys are Spike, but this one is nothing. It's not from a clan. So this is the only card, a grade 1 or less, that Mega Trainer and Conroe could not search. Next, we have the 4 Deadly Heals. Of course, important. You could not play any other heal. If you want to take one out to play a grade 3 heal, up to you. Try it out. It will not work. So 4 of the Deadly Heal is very important. We do play 4 copies of Liar Lips. It's a good shield value. It's 15k shield. It's good crit pressure. And if it comes in your damage zone, then it's a draw trigger. I mean, what do you want more? It's perfect for this deck. Next, we play 4 normally vanilla draw, but now, of course, we have this. It's good shield value, it's beautiful SP, and a beautiful art. So yeah, why not? 3 PGs, because again, we play the order PG, so important. And last but not least, the Overtrigger. We play the blue Overtrigger. If you want the full explanation on this, I could give it to you. It will be in the deck profile, so you need to wait a little bit. But these are the only two overtriggers that you want to choose from. So depending on your playstyle, depending on the situations you're in, depending on the clan you play against, this could be more effective if your opponent gets the overtrigger defensively and you still attack with your Vanguard and could set up this card, and this could be effective. And this is mostly effective because it gets your card from your drop zone back to your hand, which means that you could get heal back, you could get your starter back, Mega Trainer, you could still hit with the 1 crit, so you could still kill them, and basically it does everything that the decks needed to do for an overtrigger wise. But normally you do see your overtrigger defensively or in your hand, not that much offensively, because you don't even attack with your Vanguard during the GB8 turn, which means that it doesn't really matter which overtrigger you play. Play the one that you like with the beautiful arts. And shout out to Alex for giving me this one as a gift. And that's one of the reasons why I normally like to play this card a lot. But for argument's sake, the best overtrigger in this deck is the blue overtrigger. And that is basically it for this video. So we explained a little bit about the combo, we explained a little bit about the weaknesses of the deck, or what other clans could do against this deck and what you could do against that. The deck profile, pretty fast. And as I said, we will have more videos that explains more about the deck, the combo, the profile, the extra cards that you play in here, because you do have lots of other options that you could play. And again, we'll go into those in the other video. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for tuning in our channel. Hope to see you in the next video. So till next time.